Hello there. In this video I'm looking at AMG's latest Star Wars transmission. Hello AOS fans! Robin here, back with a slightly delayed, never quite timely AMG transmission update. In this latest transmission, they had started to look at gameplay. So in previous ones, we've looked at squad building and some of the mechanics behind the actual, how the game's going to come together. And in this video, in this first transmission, they actually looked at some gameplay concepts, what's actually going to happen on the tabletop. The first thing they showed us were the bespoke rulers, the measuring tools, and these are very familiar from people who've played Legion and AMG. They've got some hinged movement tools. Only two in MCP, Marvel Crisis Protocol. There are 3 movement tools. There's only 2. And they said that the bigger one is used for moving, and the smaller ones will be used for actions like climbing and jumping. And then there are 5 range tools, and these are used in Marvel Crisis Protocol to great effect. I guess attacks will have different ranges. There's range 1 is the width of all of them, but range, and then the range 2, 3, 4, and 5, slightly bigger rulers. Interesting. I always find it quite interesting. Obviously, a specific and taken design decision. The difference between range 2 ruler and range 3 ruler is much greater than the difference, certainly the relative distance between 3 and 4. So 4 is only a little bit bigger than 3, whereas 3 is almost twice as long as 2. It's always something to bear in mind when you start playing these games. I remember when I played MTP, I think sort of doing 2 to 3, and then suddenly thinking, oh, 4 must be a long way away, and then discovering actually it's only a tiny bit further than 3. There is another measuring tool, and that is called the shove tool, which actually looks more like a shank from all your favourite prison dramas. So it'd be interesting to see how the shove tool gets used in the game. It's got all sorts of angles and things on it. It's quite an intriguing tool. So the next thing they talked about were the rounds, or more importantly, the lack thereof. There are going to be no rounds in this game. This is not a Warhammer AOS situation, and you're not going to have everybody plays and then there's like a resolution step at the end and that. It's going to be completely dynamic, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, which I really quite like. And then how are they going to control which models you can activate? Well, with quite a nifty way, which caused some consternation on the interweb as usual, because people don't like things, particularly if they've never played them. It makes you very opinionated about them. So how's that all going to work? Well, you're going to create a little deck for your in the game, a little deck of cards. Each unit in your strike team will contribute a card to your activation deck or your order deck, and so this was confirmation that you will be fielding all of both your squads and your strike team on a battle table at one time. You're basically going to get for each squad, if you remember, is made up of 3 units. So you've got your primary unit, your secondary unit, and your support unit. So that's 3. Each one of those gets an order card that goes in the deck, and then the other squad, that's 6 cards. And then there's a wild card, the Shatterpoint card, which is wild. And then basically you shuffle them up and you draw for top. And that is the unit that you activate, and then you go through that deck till you finished it, and then you shuffle it again, and you keep going around. When fighters are killed, the card comes out. So gradually the deck gets smaller, and you can repeat those activations of those units over and over again, which is slightly interesting. I mean, I suppose it's slightly counterintuitive, because if your opponent, supposing you only had 1 model left and your opponent had all of theirs left, they could only do one thing while you were doing 6, which seemed a little bit odd, but maybe there'll be a way to counter quite how that will work. We don't know. Also, from what they said in the way objectives and things are scored, I think you're going to be scoring on every turn. So if you've got 6 fighters, you're presumably going to be swarming the objectives, and you're very quickly going to take down, very quickly bring the struggle counter right over to your side. So don't think that game situation will persist for that long. There are going to be ways in which you can control the order in which the cards come out a little bit, only a little bit. But basically, if you draw a card, you think, oh, I don't want to play that now, you can reserve it. So you basically put it down and then draw a new one, and you have to play that one. And then later in the game, you can, instead of drawing a fresh card, you can draw the reserve one, which is interesting. It does have a cost, which I think is going to be 1 force point, which we'll come to at the end of the video. So you have a choice. So you'll be like, well, do I want to It's like I really going to want this card later. Maybe it's a Shatterpoint card. Maybe you think, well, actually, I might want to activate, have more control over who I'd activate. The Shatterpoint card enables you to activate one card, any of the units, even if they've already activated. You can activate them. So you can you could give you a double turn on your one of your primary units if you like. If you drew Anakin and then you reserved your Shatterpoint card and then pick up your Shatterpoint card, maybe you would do that. Alternatively, you might be like, well, actually, I really don't want to activate my boss right now, so I'm just going to hide that, or I don't want to activate this support unit. I really need to try and find the boss, so I'm going to ditch that one, pick it up at the end maybe, and then in the meantime I'll have activated my Jedi or whatever. So there's immediately a couple of different ways it can be useful. I'm sure there are other ways for people who are better at kind of parsing game mechanics and things like that than me. Probably see other ways you could use it, but it enables you to game that system just a little bit. There were lots of people complaining about the random nature of it, which I found hilarious, because there's pretty much no games. I mean, chess obviously isn't very random, but if you want to play chess, go play chess. In tabletop games, mostly all driven by dice. So to say that this is a sort of line in the sand you're not going to cross because of its randomness, then that just to me seems absurd. Even games like Warhammer Underworlds, which obviously we play a lot. It's you go, I go. You can choose it, and you can choose who you activate. So you've got less randomness there, but everything is governed by cards, and then as Pete will tell you, everything is governed by dice. So although it's a very competitive game and it has a competitive element, then it's all driven by random factors. And even Magic the Gathering, obviously no miniatures. Obviously it's a different game to Shatterpoint, but that's all cards, and you've got loads of cards, and obviously you can do things to mitigate the randomness, but that's still at the end of the day random. And I suppose it's this forever battle, I think, between people who like to control everything and have few surprises in the game, and I suppose you could argue that makes it more competitive. I'm not sure it does make it more competitive, it just makes it more controllable. And there's two different things. You can be competitive in a sort of more random sense, but I think people feel like they like that control at the beginning, so that they go into it knowing what's going to happen. I actually prefer. I don't like that. I think for a start, it favours people who have got the time and indeed the brain set up that way to sit and churn through different combinations and work out what the most efficient way of doing something is. And I prefer to have my kind of brain power on the tabletop itself. I suppose a bit like chess. Always go back to chess, don't I? But I suppose it's kind of like you've got to make the decisions as and when that things happen. Obviously, chess doesn't have any random elements, but you're making your decision on the fly, and I prefer that personally. I like my brain power time to be actually in the game, which is why I like the Nemesis format in Warhammer Underworld more, because there's less deck building up front and more reactive thinking in the game. But different horses for different courses, and some people don't like that, and that's fine. But you don't need to say that this game is rubbish as a result of it not having what you like in it. When you do activate a unit, you can take 2 actions from a possible set. This feels like a very standard board mechanic. Played lots of board games where you get 2 actions from a choice. Quite like that. Be interested to see how it fits out in this tabletop gaming situation. You can move characters, which basically means you can advance, dash, or climb. You can focus, which makes you basically aim, if you like, you can improve your chances of hitting your attack. You can do combat, so you can make an attack. You can use an ability if your unit has got an ability. Recover, this is quite an interesting one. Recover enables you to heal, which is I think it's fairly unusual in games that actually you can take the time out to heal yourself up, or even a nearby character, which I sort of like. And then you can also take cover. It doesn't really, what it says in the text is each character in the unit is pushed and gains a hunker token, which improves its defense against range attacks, such as like diving to the ground. Again, it's an interesting mechanic. It's one of those ones I always felt like, is it better to risk being blown to pieces than actually do something, or should I sort of hunker down? I guess we'll have to wait and see how the rest of the game works to decide which is going to be the best thing. And I'm guessing it's probably going to be situational. And obviously, as the game goes on, your activations that you've got in your little activation deck, your order deck, as things die, then it becomes less random. You're going to be churning through your orders faster with the fewer units they're going to repeat. Which itself is interesting. It's like when it gives you a tactical decision. Do you sort of concentrate fire on your opponent's weaker troops to try and give you a bit of an advantage in the objective area, to try and control more objectives because you have more troops? But if you do that, they're going to be activating their primary units more regularly. So, and similarly, if you offer up your weaker fighters to them as a sacrifice so that you can activate your primary units more regularly? I don't know, but it's kind of interesting. I also wonder, it gives us a little bit of perspective potential maybe to add like Fog of War cards. If you've ever played Undaunted, that has Fog of War cards in use a deck building game, but so your activation deck gets bigger. But I wonder whether there might be this possibility going into the mechanics. You could add Fog of War cards in, so as things get confusing, you draw a card and you can't actually use it. It would be quite interesting and a way of expanding the game, so I quite like that. And the final thing they discussed was the concept of Force. Obviously, the Force is huge in Star Wars, and I think anybody who loves Star Wars, certainly anybody who loves Star Wars from an early age, there's always been an affinity with the Force. There's something about it, I think, ever since seeing Luke Skywalker trying to hit the little droid thing with his lightsaber with his shield down. There was just something interesting, exciting about that, and obviously we all want to play this game with the Force. How that's going to work? It's going to be mainly primary units, they said, that have a Force stat. And each one has a Force stat, and they gave an example of Anakin. Anakin has a Force stat of 4, and you basically create a pool with your squad, or your 2 squads, your strike team. So again, another confirmation that you will be having both strike teams on the table. You've got, so Ahsoka is 3, and Anakin is 4, so that'll give you 7 Force points if you had those 2 on the table. Anakin, interestingly, is 7 squad points, as opposed to Ahsoka, who was 8, and I suppose that's reflected that his Force stat is bigger. If you remember, the higher your SP, your squad, the more you can spend on forces in your squad, the more on units in your squad. So the lower it is, the better the actual primary unit is, the better the Jedi is, I suppose. So you have your 7, and then you can spend them. And there's an example they gave, which was a Force jump. I'm assuming it's only 1 per sort of Force action. I don't know. There might be stronger Force actions that use more. But if you think about that, that's 7 points across what I assume will be the whole game. So that's all 3 struggles, or possibly 2 struggles if it goes to 2-0. Because it did say in the previous article that the board state remains the same across across the 3 struggles. So I assume you don't get those Force points back. So that's quite a scant resource to use, because I think also they alluded to that Force points will be used for you when you reserve the card to change the order of the order deck. So that's going to cost you Force points. So you have a limited number of the times you can actually use the Force, and maybe these Force powers are really strong. Makes you wonder how often you'll be reserving cards. I didn't say, but you can only reserve 1 card at once. So that's interesting. You have to play it before you can reserve another one. So you're going to have to think carefully about how you use your Force points. It mentions in the article that do you go all guns blazing, all the Force blazing, go hot, try and burn your Force points, try and get a couple of decisive hits in with your Force things, or do you reserve them later? Do you spread them around? I don't know what the answer to that is, but that statement itself suggests that you can have use more than 1 Force power in a turn. So sometimes engage you can only use things like that, only use 1 at a time. But the suggestion that you can burn a large number of points sort of suggests that you might be able to do 2 or 3 things, like maybe a Force jump and then a Force, I don't know, choke if you're mean and nasty. Who knows? That's another really exciting thing we're going to find out about Shatterpoint. They talked about in the next transmission there'll be some more gameplay reveals, and I will hopefully cover that in my usual slightly late fashion. But I'm really appreciative to anybody who's still listening to me bourbon on about Shatterpoint. I'm getting more excited about the game. I know that Pete is a big fan of the order activation kind of mechanic. He likes that in Undaunted, and he likes that just generally. I think he likes to not have that pressure of trying to work out what is the best unit to activate first. That's kind of taken away from you in this, and I like the fact that it just keeps going. I keep fighting the Jedi up against it. There might be the last one left while he's trying to kill two or three different units, and you basically fighting for his life. I really like that dynamic mechanic, so I'm looking forward to seeing how it all breaks down when the game comes. So do give us a like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this content, and I'll see you soon on the Age of Sigmar discussing Shatterpoint with just me, or maybe Pete and I playing some Underworlds. Whatever we're doing, we'll see you soon. Bye for now.